What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today we're going to talk about why I got things wrong in Q3 and why I think the cycle top is still closer than people think. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. I'll actually start off, guys, by showing you a chart. This is the S&P 500 on the monthly, and a few months ago, basically since the spring, I've been basically predicting that we would see a massive rally in stocks and in crypto. If I was to tell you guys that the S&P 500 would be pushing on 7,000 in this massive green candle here in September, where would you guess that Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market would be? Probably at all-time highs, right? And of course, that was basically my guess. And of course, it didn't really turn out that way, but I do think that cycle top rally is coming. And before you type in the comments, oh, well, it was obvious, September is seasonally bad and whatever. Well, Bitcoin looks like it's going to close. I'm filming this a little bit in advance, but it looks like Bitcoin is going to close September in the green, which is actually something that I had predicted in one of my videos. So I guess I got that call right, that September would close in the green for Bitcoin and actually for the total crypto market cap as a whole. The simple reason being, guys, is that the reason why September is seasonally bad has to do with institutional flows, and most of the flows in the market right now are from retail. So my hypothesis was that because most of the flows are from retail, any institutional rebalancing effects after summer that typically cause this drawdown in September are either going to be muted or non-existent, and the result is that we did see, again, stocks blast off to new all-time highs, and even Bitcoin closing green in the month of September, where both stocks and Bitcoin should have been down. Anyways, with that out of the way, I will read once again from a research feed post. Again, this is all filmed in advance. I also let this know kind of earlier to our Coin Bureau Club members, and I'll read off this research feed post. So I was wrong about the Q3 cycle top, but the cycle is not over yet. Today is the final day of Q3, and though this post, and in this case this video, is written in advance, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that the top won't be in on September 30th. This officially invalidates my Q3 cycle top thesis, but I reckon it's extremely important to explain why I was so dead set on a Q3 cycle top right until the end, and why I still strongly believe the crypto market is likely to top in the next 6 to 8 weeks. There are multiple indicators I've been tracking to get a sense of when crypto could top. These four are arguably the most important and also the most straightforward. Since July 2nd, the DXY has been on the brink of a second leg lower in its most recent downtrend. Historically speaking, a second leg lower in a DXY downtrend corresponded to an altcoin season and the cycle top. Since August 15th, 2025, the Russell 2000 has been on the brink of a massive breakout. Historically speaking, a breakout in the Russell 2000 corresponded to an altcoin season and eventually the cycle top. Since July 20th, 2025, altcoin indices such as Others, Total 2, and Total 2 excluding stablecoins have been on the brink of a massive multi-year breakout. Historically speaking, these breakouts correspond to altcoin seasons and cycle tops. Since July 14th, 2025, Bitcoin dominance has been breaking down from a technical perspective, specifically on longer-term timeframes like the monthly. Historically speaking, Bitcoin dominance breakdowns on longer-term timeframes corresponded to altcoin seasons and cycle tops. These indicators have all been flashing an imminent rally for almost 3 months, like you can see, since early July for most of them, so basically since July for August in the case of the Russell 2000. So again, these indicators have all been flashing an imminent rally for almost 3 months, but never managed to get that confirmation. This has been extremely frustrating, but it's not bearish. That's simply because all of these indicators are still in bullish territory. They're still on the brink of confirmation. This means a cycle top should come sooner than later. I now expect Bitcoin to top in October and most altcoins to top by early to mid-November. And again, this is a post I did in the research feed in the Coin Bureau Club, which is where we do deep dives into small cap altcoins every single week. The way we pick those altcoins is based on whichever altcoins our members vote on. And we have a research feed where I'm sharing insights like this, a team portfolio page where you can find the cryptos that we hold as well as the cryptos we're considering buying, an exclusive deals page where you can find discounts on crypto research platforms and stuff like that, and a members Discord where you can ask us questions and a whole bunch of fun stuff like that. And of course, I'm sure that one of the first questions I'm going to get here when it comes to, me saying that there's going to be a rally in the next 6 to 8 weeks, you might be thinking, oh, well, it's going to be some multi-month thing. But in case you guys haven't noticed, if you look historically, especially when it comes to altcoins, in this case, we're looking at Others, you can see that the final blow-off top rally in 2017, it lasted for around 8 weeks. And the last two rallies we saw in altcoins in early 2024 and late 2025 for. These lasted for exactly 6 weeks, or I guess closer to 5 weeks, honestly, in some of these cases. So when I'm drawing out this kind of like a bar here, which of course I've been consistently pushing it back, because of course you can see basically since July 7th or since July 15th, you can see that we've been waiting for a breakout of others to happen here, and it's just been chopping sideways, which from a technical perspective is actually good, because that means that, once it does break out, there's a lot more room to run in terms of like RSI, because you've reset positioning and sentiment. But all of that aside, the point is that once we get a breakout out of this kind of, well, out of others and whatever, whether you're looking at total 2 or total 2 ES, once we get a breakout, that rally is probably only going to last for around 6 to 8 weeks, simply because that's the length of the rallies we've seen so far this cycle. And it's also consistent with the length of rallies that we saw in previous cycles outside of 2020 and 2021, which I would argue was more of an anomaly. You had people sitting at home, they had more time to pay attention to crypto, and the result is that you saw this a big drawn out rally. It had nothing to do with the stimmy checks. Subsequent research found that less than like 0.01 or 0.02% of stimmy checks went into crypto, so it had nothing to do with the stimmy checks. Global money supply, everything, all this money printing is still happening now. You can see retail investors speculating in stocks at record levels that are like, 2 or 3 times higher than in 2020 and 2021 in the case of options and penny stocks. All the trading volumes and everything is way higher than 2020, 2021 right now. So that tells you that a shortage of money, stimmy checks, is not the reason why there's been this underperformance. It's basically just been a lack of attention. And again, once that attention comes, it's probably going to be fleeting. It's only going to last for around 6 to 8 weeks, because that's what we've seen historically, even within this cycle. And as I mentioned earlier, guys, altcoin seasons, historically speaking, corresponded to breakouts in the Russell 2000, because there's lots of overlap between small cap stocks and altcoins. And you can see that right now we're seeing a breakout very similar to late 2020. And it's basically, any day now that we should see a basically melt up in the Russell 2000 and a corresponding melt up in altcoins. And again, if you look at the length of this rally, it only lasted for around 2 months before it kind of topped out and then started chopping. And again, this whole kind of chop and distribution was arguably also an artifact of the basically 2020, 2021 pandemic conditions, where everyone was locked down at home and had more time to pay attention to things like stocks and investing. And then again, also on the DXY, you guys will already know from this chart earlier this week, first leg lower in the DXY corresponds to Bitcoin rally, then you get a little bit of chop, then you get a second leg lower that corresponds to altcoin season. This chart is still in the process of potentially breaking down here, and you can see that basically since that last week of June, we've been waiting for the DXY to get that second leg lower, and hopefully by the time you see this video, the second leg lower has already started, be it because of a government shutdown or something else. But hopefully that second leg lower has started, so we will be getting the start of that altcoin season in October, which is now by the time you see this video. Last but not least, guys, Bitcoin dominance. And again, like who knows, maybe this will age very badly, and by the time you see this video, Bitcoin dominance will be higher. But just no matter how many times I analyze this chart, I know that like Ben Cowan and many people are saying that Bitcoin dominance is going to bounce, but no matter how many times I analyze this chart, there is going to be at least one more leg lower before there's any significant bounce. If the equivalent of where we are now is like in February 2025, like you can think of like the inverse, like we're looking at some kind of head and shoulders pattern here. No matter which way you look at it, it looks like that Bitcoin dominance is going to keep heading down, at least in the short term. But again, when you zoom out to the monthly, you guys can see that once Bitcoin dominance starts going down, it goes down only. The one caveat, and one thing that's actually really interesting, is if we throw on the Bollinger Bands, which you guys know are my favorite indicators, you can see that that Bitcoin dominance basically caught some support around the Bollinger Band moving average around 58, close to, it's like 58.66, so let's say 59, 57, 59%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's interesting that, of course, Bitcoin dominance saw a little bit of basically catching support here around this level. But if you were just to look at this from a purely technical perspective on the monthly, you got to drop down to a key support level, and then what comes next? A continuation lower of that bear flag, right? And a continued drop in Bitcoin dominance that's probably going to last, in this case, probably into October. But the key takeaway here being, guys, is that all of these indicators, again, they're still on the brink of a breakout. The reason why I was so dead set since the spring was because since the spring I knew we would get a rally to these key levels, whether it was in the Russell 2000 or in others, and of course, like I said, we can see that in stocks were just completely powering higher. And this idea of like the S&P 500, you can even see here, this is a chart that I had drawn out for a while. I was expecting the S&P 500 to rally up to around 6,900 basically by September. That's exactly what happened, and my logical kind of analysis there was like, well, then that's probably going to translate to a cycle top in Bitcoin or in altcoins or in both. And of course, it's also consistent with Bitcoin's historical cycles. If you follow like what's his name there, Peter Brandt was saying that, like, historically speaking, based on time between halvings and other cycle tops and whatever else, you'd be looking at a time frame somewhere in like early to mid, maybe late September. And now, of course, we're entering October, but it doesn't change the fact that all these indicators are still on a breakout, on the brink of a breakout. And given the historical length of these rallies, once the breakouts start, you're not going to be dealing with something that is lasting multiple months. You'll be dealing with something that is lasting at the most 2 months. And I'm glad that there are some other traders who see this and that I'm not the only one. But just keep that in mind, is that when you start to see that parabolic move higher, just start, counting it down. And of course, I will be keeping track of all these indicators, and I'll let you guys know when I start to see them breaking out, and I'll let you know when that timer has started, and hopefully when that timer has ended. That's going to be a whole other adventure, I'm sure. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far and you did find that information helpful, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ding that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.